You are listening to Lone Star Community Radio on 104.5 KCZW LP Conroe and 106.1 KZCCLP Conroe and worldwide on irlonestar.com.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this week's edition of the Weekly Business Hour. This is Rick Schissler, your Silver Fox advisor and host of the Weekly Business Hour. Glad you stopped in to hear the show today. We've got some great guests lined up for you, and you know, it's one heck of a beautiful day here in downtown Conroe. Conroe, the fastest growing city in America, according to a recent census report. So we've got a lot of action, a lot of activity going on around us, and hopefully we'll be able to share some of that business activity with you. Perhaps provide some education, some encouragement, so everybody out there wants to be in business for themselves. I love the individuals who go into business, the entrepreneurs. That's what this show is all about, Small Business America. So welcome. First, I want to, thank our show sponsor. We always appreciate our sponsors here, sponsoring Small Business Voice on the Weekly Business Hour. And our show sponsor, AllegraHR.com. Allegra HR. Those folks do a great job in helping small, medium, and even large-sized businesses with their HR needs. Don't forget, if you have one or more employees, you need some HR assistance. Human resources is a key success factor in building a business. And also on the downside, there's some traps that we need to be careful. There are rules governing how we should treat people in the workplace. Just turn on your TV if you don't believe me. There's a lot out there on a national basis. But Allegra HR can help you navigate the conditions that exist out there and also can help you build a better workforce for yourself. So reach out to AllegraHR.com. Just simply go to their website, AllegraHR.com. Reminder, too, that we're on Facebook. If you haven't already liked us on our Facebook page, The Weekly Business Hour, I encourage you to do so. One of the great things about that is we post our podcast each week. You can get an alert that says, hey, new show up. Go check it out. We try to put a good, thorough synopsis with it. You can see who the guests are, what the topics are, see something that interests you, then click on and listen to each show. That's Facebook, the Weekly Business Hour page. Please like us. We have a show, as I mentioned to you, some interesting local guests here, people that are out there making it happen. Our special business owner guest today is Bob Weisner, owner of the Home Team Inspection Services. Also joining us will be Peter Dill. Peter's an expert in procurement and logistics and will join us in the Expert Corner to talk about how even small businesses need to pay attention to how they purchase and how they move their products around. And I'll close out today's show with my Silver Fox tip of the week, growth strategies not to forget for 2018. So at this point, I encourage you, sit back and grab your pad and pencil and get ready to take notes as we talk about business right here on the Weekly Business Hour. And let's start first with the Silver Fox Advisors. As you know, I'm a Silver Fox Advisors. Silver Fox Advisors, people say, well, what's that? Well, we're a group of men and women here in the greater Houston area. We finish our main career tracks, come from all kinds of backgrounds, some of us business owners, some of us worked in corporate management, but we come together to help small and medium-sized businesses grow. And one of the neat things I want to mention to you about Silver Fox Advisors, I encourage you to go to their website. That's silverfoxadvisors.org. One of the things on the website, if you go to the far right side of the buttons at the top, click on press, and then click on newsletter. I encourage you to sign up for their newsletter. You can take a look right at that point about past newsletters, get an idea of what they're like. They're very short and sweet, but they make some great points. There's always one or two original articles written by Silver Fox Advisors based on their experience, based on their expertise that I think you can find or will find helpful in your business. silverfoxadvisors.org. Check it out. Opportunities are always right in front of us. Sometimes we don't see them, but I encourage you, get up and grab them. The Weekly Business Hour is where Montgomery County and businesses throughout the world come to talk about the latest in business news, ideas to improve your business, and to hear from some of our own local business leaders on how they have found success right here in Montgomery County. Reminder to you before you really crank the show up, there's a podcast, as I mentioned earlier, of the show each week posted, typically within 48 to 72 hours of today's show. I encourage you, remember that, in case you missed the show or you hear something, you want to listen to it again, you can check out that podcast in a number of locations. But first, I want to mention YouTube. We have a channel there, the Weekly Business Hour. Go to YouTube, type in the Weekly Business Hour, and it'll take you to a list of all the shows for the recent past, and you can check out today's show as well as some others. Well, today, as I mentioned, we have a wonderful business guest, Bob Weisner, owner of Home Team Inspection Services, with us in the studio to talk about his success in being an independent entrepreneur businessman. Bob, welcome to the studio.
Thank you, Rick.
Well, I appreciate you coming in today, Bob. You're in the inspection business, home inspection business, and I think that happens to be a really interesting business. But let's start out a little bit with your business story. How did you come to get in the home inspection business?
Well, I was in corporate management. Actually, I was in procurement, just like Peter, who will be here later. And I wanted to transition into something else, so I decided to look at several businesses. In the past, I had been in steel fabrication and steel machining, but I didn't, and I explored that business a little bit, but it was, I didn't see the business growth in that industry, and I'd been out of it for so long. It was just too much of a learning curve, capital expenditures, all that stuff to get back into it. So I started going to some franchise shows, and basically through process of elimination through several business models, I decided on home inspection. It offered to me the best of both worlds in terms of the cost, the entry costs to get into, as well as what I like to do, which is more technical type of operation. So this was a nice fit for me.
You know, I find that interesting because I've had other folks on the show, and I've worked with other people in my mentoring and advising as a Silver Fox advisor, that they use the franchise model. They use the franchise show. It's almost like a big book that you can open up and say, okay, what do I want to be when I grow up? That's always my expression. Mm-hmm. And they haven't made a decision on what that is, but by looking at the various franchise models that are available out there, it leads them to the business. So you start with the franchise, then you find a franchise model that sort of fits, and it makes it work. Is that what it sounds that's what you did?
Well, I'm not the youngest guy out there, so I think franchises sort of offer some things that you can really compress your learning curve on. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to go out and find or create branding for yourself, which to me sometimes you get you can't get the creative juices flowing, so you don't know what you want to call your company. You don't know how to brand it, and and then if you don't do that yourself, you're going out and trying to find some other people to do it, and untested. So that's with franchises, all that's pretty much laid out for you. They have the branding. A lot of times they have a national presence already established. The costing, the bookkeeping, all that stuff is already done, and they're there to give you that help in terms of, and then the marketing as well. So,
well, that's typically when I talk to someone, the reason they went the franchise route is, like you say, that kind of structure or infrastructure, if you will, is there. That kind of gets you started the first day. I mean, you're out of the chute the first day. You're not worrying about what kind of bookkeeping software to buy or who's going to print up your materials or design your materials. In fact, I commented to you before the show, I really like your print materials, your website, very well done. You avoid all that, don't you?
Yes.
I mean, that to me, that's worth something, and obviously it was worth it to you. Now, has your franchise provider, have they given you other kinds of support beyond the marketing and the bookkeeping and whatnot?
Not necessarily. I keep in touch with them on a regular basis. They pretty much, I get email communication from them a lot. They're there if I want to talk to them. They do give us legal support in terms of some of the agreements that we use and that type of thing. If I want to add a service, call them. They can add verbiage onto agreements that allow me to operate. So, yeah, in terms of that, they got all kinds of stuff going on.
Let me ask you this. In the state of Texas, it's my understanding that home inspection and whatnot is licensed. So what kind of licensing process? Did you go take a test, background check? I mean, what does it require in the state of Texas to be a licensed home inspector?
You have to take a lot of schooling. It's I forget exactly. It's a lot of courses, usually from one of the certified real estate schools or licensed real estate schools. And then from that, you apply. You have to go out with an inspector, an approved inspector for a certain period of time. You do take a test. You take actually 2 tests all in one day. You take a state test and then a national test, and pay your fees all the time.
Yeah, I guess the state's always making sure you pay your fees. Mm-hmm. Well, believe it or not, Bob, we've come to the end of our first segment. I appreciate that insight. When we come back, ladies and gentlemen, we'll talk to Bob a little bit more about this really competitive industry and how he, as an individual getting started, has been able to compete and build his business. So please stay with us. We'll be right back with you.
Human resources play a huge role in today's business world and can be a real challenge for small businesses. Allegre is a premier option in small business HR solutions and needs. Allegre HR advisors provide help to small business owners by allowing them to focus on operational needs while providing solutions that address all areas of human resources. To find out more, contact Allegre HR advisors today at 281-620-0713 or visit AllegreHR.com.
Lone Star Community Radio is looking for those who are interested in hosting their own talk show. With monthly and weekly slots available on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, and on irlonestar.com. Start your own podcast, create your first YouTube channel, and be on TV. Contact Lone Star Community Radio online at irlonestar.com or call the message line at 936-647-3776 to take your first step into the radio world.
This is Rick Schissler, your Silver Fox advisor and host of the Weekly Business Hour. And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We're here in the studio talking to Bob Weisner, who is the owner of Home Team Inspection Services. Bob and I have been talking about a competitive industry, the home inspection industry. Bob, what is how do you compete? I mean, you and I have talked off air about, it's kind of like realtors. There's one on every corner. Don't know that it's that bad for home inspectors, but there always seems to be new folks coming into the business. How do you compete?
It's not that bad, but it is pretty competitive. And the idea is to keep in front of realtors are a primary source of referrals. So we have to keep in touch with those and communicate with realtors all the time. We also have different modes of advertising as well, and get out in front of clients. And the things that we try to do is just operationally treat the client as well as we possibly can. First of all, with a very easy ordering process, we have a couple of great girls that answer the phone professionally, can take your order. Then I follow up with a thorough inspection, a very simple, easy report to read, and then a very good walkthrough with the client at the end of the inspection, so that and answer whatever questions they have, and then be available for them on any follow-up. So it's really communication constantly.
Well, and that's a secret probably in every business is communication. If people just focus, if nothing else, on making sure people knew where they were in the process and working with them. Well, let me backtrack a little bit. You mentioned that you have to stay in touch with realtors. I'm sure for you, there's probably 10 others doing what you do that are trying to stay in touch with the same realtor, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how do you stand out in that crowd?
Well, you really have to kind of get a break. Some realtors just get frustrated with their last inspection, and if you call at the right time, you're going to be on their list. There's really nothing more scientific than that. It's just constantly calling, keeping in communication with them, and hopefully, if they have a primary inspector, they have somebody they can use. At least you can get on their list, and if the one guy can't provide an inspection, they have a backup in you. So,
one of the things I learned lately, my wife and I had sold a home some time ago, and I had always, we've owned homes for 35 years, and I actually used an inspection on the first home, which there weren't a lot of you guys back then, but this guy was kind of a pioneer in the industry, and we found him out in Humble. But anyway, the point is that when we sold our last home, home was 25, 30 years old, and whoever inspected it for the buyer came in, and we got a copy of the report. It had 74 items on it. And I'm sitting there going, how are we going to negotiate all this out? Because, this guy did the most thorough, and I've got a background in commercial buildings, so I related to almost everything on it. I said, but this is so far. Taking every electrical plug to current code and things. It was just amazing. And to me, that could have been offensive as a seller, and it could have messed the deal up. We ended up making the deal, but is that a fine line you walk? That report and how it's perceived by both buyer and seller, because typically I assume there's some kind of negotiation of what gets fixed or doesn't get fixed.
Well, all of the items that are on the report obviously are what you can use to negotiate with. The key is going by the standards and making sure that the things that you put on the report are structurally significant or functionally significant. There are a few items that, we don't concentrate on bringing things up to codes. We just concentrate on structurally and functionally significant items, and then those things on the standards. For instance, one of the most common items are GFCI electrical plugs. A lot of the houses that are 15 years old, 20 years old, just aren't up to standard in that. Their plugs may work just fine. However, the standards say that you really, on every kitchen countertop and every garage exterior plug, should be on a GFCI. So those things, obviously, we're going to point out. Other things may not be as significant, but we'll always, it just all depends on, again, if that's on a report, you as the buyer have to figure out how bad you want the house, how much that particular thing is going to cost to fix, or how significant it is to you, and what you want out of the deal on closing day, and what you think you can fix in the future. Some people are very, very adventurous and don't really care if there's a couple of things wrong.
I guess my point is that sometimes people can do their job so well, and attorneys, other people get accused of this, that they actually cause the deal to implode because they're too thorough, at least in the reporting, how they report it. A 74 item, I forgot how many pages. It was like a book. Kind of threw me for a loop. And I said, gosh, I'm not going to go through and haggle on all this stuff about what gets fixed and done, because I was ready to move on. And to me, it could have worked against the buyer, particularly since we had another buyer standing in line. So it's an interesting line that you all walk. Well, let me ask you, in the last 5 years, I know you haven't been in the business for 5 years, but in the last years and what you've learned and you come in, what has really changed? Besides there are more of you.
There's more of us. That's certainly for sure. I think there's a lot more instruments to use in terms of trying to check out a house. Many of the inspectors now will carry levelers to just see what the level of a foundation is. I have a laser level where I can go around and check the heights of walls. In certain areas, thermal imaging is a pretty big asset now that the inspector can use. So there's a lot of things that the inspectors can do that they perhaps couldn't or wouldn't in the past.
So technology has had it sounds like a pretty big impact on your business in the last few years, as it has so many businesses.
Yeah, and also some of the things as well, reporting software. We can go around the house and we can actually input certain comments as we're doing the inspection, so that the report, we can develop the report as we go. And hopefully this enables us to get the report done a little faster and into the buyer's hands faster, so that they can use as much of their option period as possible.
Yeah, you make a good point, because everything you do, I guess, is really on a tight time schedule, typically based on my knowledge of residential real estate.
Yeah, the TREC Real Estate Commission allows us 3 days to get a report to a client. We never wait 3 days to get a report to a client. I don't think anybody out there that's competing is going to wait 3 days. So usually within a day, we'll have the report.
So it is necessary for you to write it as you go, so to speak.
Exactly.
Well, let me ask you, on a day-to-day basis, we've kind of touched on, what are some of the biggest challenges you face, though, in running your business? It sounds like you've got a good communication system put in place, but what are some of the challenges that being in this industry presents you on a day-to-day basis?
Well, I'm not sure a lot of this is specific to this industry. Being a new business owner, there's things that you can that are different than a normal job. There are no such things as weekends or nights or whatever. You're working or thinking about it all the time. You're taking calls at all times of the week, day and night. So you're scheduling appointments, and the other thing is the variety of actions that you're trying to accomplish. Marketing, and then going to an inspection, then maybe going back to a sales call again, and going to another inspection. There's always you're always on your toes in terms of the schedule you need to meet, and trying to stay up with it all.
Well, it sounds like you're a true entrepreneur. It's 24/7, at least availability-wise. Mm-hmm. What are some of the metrics, or how do you measure your success as you're going along? I mean, do you have goals or benchmarks that are particular to you as you grow your business?
Just an increase in sales, an increase in the number of inspections that we can do a day. Eventually, I plan on developing teams myself. Part of the home team concept is to do inspections in teams. I normally do that. There's times when I do inspections myself, but normally I go out with a team. And the team can be 2, 3, 4 people, depending on the size of the house and what we have to accomplish. Because one of the things we want to do is get in and out as soon as possible in a reasonable amount of time. I know there's some inspectors out there that may be at a house for 4, 5, 6 hours, and we try to 2-3 hours tops.
That's an interesting concept. So you basically form a team. I've never observed that, but that's interesting. It makes it more efficient to get in and out of the house that quickly. Well, Bob, we're kind of winding down on our time today, and quickly, we've got about 30 seconds. What does the future hold for you and your business?
Well, I expect to persist on and expand market share in the Houston and surrounding areas. As I said, I plan to develop teams. I still want to be involved in home inspection, as always. Continue to learn. There's, again, evolving technology in this industry that's going to keep it interesting for a long time. So those are the types of things I'm looking at doing.
Well, it sounds like you've got a future staked out for you in an industry that I feel is changing just tremendously based on what you've taught us today. If folks want to get in touch with you and talk about your business or perhaps use your services, what's the best way for them to do it?
You can call my front office, 832-930-4114. They can connect you to me. You can email me at bwiesner@hometeam.com. Those are the two best ways to contact.
Well, Bob, again, I can't thank you enough for taking time to join us today, and to wish you great success in the years to come. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to our bottom of the hour break, and when we come back, we've got Peter Dill. Peter's going to join us. Bob and I know him through an Aggie networking group, and that isn't all bad, right, Bob? But
nope,
Peter's
good.
going to come in and talk about logistics and procurement and how you as a small business owner can take advantage of some things that might just save you some money. So please stay with us. We'll be right back.
Human resources play a huge role in today's business world and can be a real challenge for small businesses. Allegre is a premier option in small business HR solutions and needs. Allegre HR advisors provide help to small business owners by allowing them to focus on operational needs while providing solutions that address all areas of human resources. To find out more, contact Allegre HR advisors today at 281-620-0713 or visit allegrehr.com.
Don't forget to download the Lone Star Community Radio app for your Google Play or Apple Store. Bring Montgomery County's community radio with you anywhere with your smartphone or tablet. If you are in the Conroe area, tune in on FM. That is Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1.
Well, welcome back to the Weekly Business Hour. This is Rick Schissler, your Silver Fox advisor and host of the Weekly Business Hour. I want to remind you before we get started in this segment that you can find a podcast of today's program on a variety of social media sites I'd mentioned earlier today, YouTube, but you can find it on Facebook. Again, I encourage you to sign up as like us on Facebook at the Weekly Business Hour. It's also put out on Google Play as well as iTunes. So a number of social media sites, as well as right here at the station at website at irlonestar.com, the Weekly Business Hour. And before we go further, I want to thank the sponsor of our show, Allegra HR. AllegraHR.com. That's where you can go and find out some great information that can help you be more successful in managing perhaps the most important part of your business, and that's your human resources. These are good folks. They'll work with businesses with just a handful of employees up to thousands. They have great experience, international experience, and I encourage you, if you want to develop a stronger work team, then go to AllegraHR.com and get some information. Contact these folks to build a better relationship, a stronger, more progressive team in your business. Well, we're in the expert corner, and we've got us another expert here in the studio today, I'm glad to say, Mr. Peter Dill. Peter's an expert in procurement and logistics and also a member of our Reveille North Aggie group. Right, Peter? Welcome to the show.
Well, sure am. Thanks a lot, Rick. Sure glad to be here this morning.
Well, I appreciate you having it. And again, if you're not an Aggie, please don't turn off the radio. Peter's a smart guy anyway. Well, I attend that group as well, even though I came from a little further to the west in UT Austin. Peter, we're going to talk a little bit about procurement and logistics. And, you know, that when someone mentions that to me, I think of a large corporation, a multinational corporation. But as you and I discussed, there's a lot of things in procurement and logistics that are really important to smaller businesses. Let's talk about those.
Okay. Well, yeah, I can tell you that procurement can apply to really the same concepts really apply whether you're a big business like Anadarko or General Motors, Steve Logistics, or some of those other companies I work for, but also in your own household and even in the small companies. Things like, for instance, making sure that you have a breakout of what someone's charging you. You need to know what they're charging you. Certainly fine for them to make a profit. You want those companies to make a profit, but you also want to understand how you're spending your money.
Well, you make a great point. And one of the things I kind of hurdled over, what is your background? I mean, you're obviously have become, in my opinion, an expert. What is your background in procurement and logistics?
Yeah, just a short overview here. So I've worked for many of those global corporations you've talked about, 9 years with General Motors, 4 years with FMC Technologies, 7 years with Steve Logistics, and most recently Chicago Bridge and Iron. So I've run global support and sourcing teams and logistics teams. And funny thing is, a lot of people tell me, well, Peter, you've done a lot of procurement and logistics. You must be really good at negotiating with those suppliers. And I tell them, yeah, that's true, but also negotiating and making sure everybody inside your big or small companies, negotiating with those folks too, and making sure everybody's on the same page and swimming in the same direction.
Well, one of the things that is, as I mentioned earlier, and you touched on, is in the smaller businesses. I mean, we're still buying things. We're still purchasing things. We're still moving our product, our services, whatever, logistically. The same basic principles just have to apply, don't they?
Absolutely. It, again, comes back to spending your own money, comes back to looking inside your own organization and saying, whether you're maybe a small company right here in Conroe, do we make that thing or do we want to buy it? And look at some of those different options to do the same. You can look at some of your competitors. You can look at some other businesses that perhaps you don't compete with, get together with them and say, well, how do you spend your money? And what kind of methodology and ideas do you have there? A couple of the things to think about, and these aren't hard concepts, are clear requirements. Talk to your employees and your suppliers about exactly what you need. When I find when things work well, people understand those things really well. When things need a little bit of work or fixing, it's because perhaps you as a business owner weren't as clear as you could be, or you could look for ways to be clear with your suppliers about exactly what you need, how much of it you need, and when you need it.
One of the things I learned early in my career, in fact, the first business that I bought into was a custom manufacturing business. And so we had to buy a lot of things to manufacture our products. And again, they were really custom. Everything we built was different in a general categories, but it was different. And that was always one of the biggest problems we had. And I consider it a small business. We got up to about 100 employees in our manufacturing and a couple, 3 offices around the state of Texas. But it was just the ability to buy and get things at the best price, get them delivered on time. It was constantly a challenge for us to do it. And we had competent people working in the function, but it was just like, I don't know, I thought it was like a madhouse, trying to do that.
Well, Rick, you hit on a real good point there about customized things. Wherever you can, if you can, look at ways to standardize, whether you're talking about just a simple widget or a piece of furniture or a piece of electronic equipment, or something as big as a subsea tree for one of the major oil companies or those kind of things. If you can find ways to deliver the same thing to your different customers, get them what they need. Don't try and push them on something that they don't need on the sales side. But if you can say, look, I've got this thing. Well, I'll give you exactly what you want, a customized solution, or I can give you this for a lot less money. And then I can go to my suppliers and negotiate better deals. So if that's, again, back to clear requirements. Another key thing is a simple concept of one voice. Comes across, like I talked about earlier, to making sure that everyone in the different departments, big or small company, are all thinking the same thing versus procurement on one end versus engineering on another end, or other folks saying, well, I'm going to go after it this way. But when you communicate out to your customers and your suppliers, you all got to be on the same team.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me. Let me ask you, I've got to ask you, it's an obvious question. The internet has had to have a tremendous impact, because when I was doing my thing 30 years ago, 35 years ago, we didn't have that. Right. Which was a real handicap, because you had certain suppliers, they sent you the big catalogs. I mean, it was a default kind of thing. Like, I got to get this ordered, so I grab that catalog and I do it. Don't check for best price, et cetera. Really, how has the internet affected the procurement and the logistics business?
It's really opened it up, Rick. You can talk about being able to do some simple research very quickly to see what's out there, who's selling what for different prices, but also even things like logistics, which we will touch on here in a little bit, I'm sure. But just being able to track and see where things are, see what different prices are out there. And then when you get into some more sophisticated things like robotic process automation and blockchain and some of those type of things. But the other thing is just to organize your data so you can organize your business and your data, even if it's a spreadsheet of 10 things or multi-level spreadsheets of thousands of things, to understand what you've got and how many of it you need, and be able to translate that back out. Again, clear requirements back out to your suppliers and say, this is where I need help. But the internet is an amazing tool, but it's really only as good as the information you put into it.
Well, and I think that's why, as we dig down in this a little more specifically, I mean, again, the big guys, they work on it constantly. They're not in a set pattern. What are some of the things specifically, though, that could be helpful to the small, medium-sized businesses, say in our own backyard here, that the large guys do that we could integrate into our systems?
Just really communication. And sometimes we talk about the big guys, having big companies having a lot of systems and off-the-shelf and purchase systems, but just simple communication. I'm surprised, obviously, about the opportunity for groups to get together, even in a small company of 10, 15, 20 people, just to make sure they have level set meetings or calls if you have your spread out over a community like this or something, just to talk about. Is sales communicating with procurement to say, this is what our customers are saying we need, so let's go out and buy those things? Is your quality folks, and that can be a whole department, that can be one person saying, this is what I'm seeing out in the warehouse. We're getting in this material. It's either on time, it's good quality, or it's late and it's broken. You need to be able to communicate those things and take out some, or lay out some specific requirements so you can communicate back and forth across your organization. That way your suppliers are getting, again, comes back to giving your suppliers what they need when they need it.
Well, and I think that's important. It keeps seeming you're touching on this communication things. And again, I've observed working with clients over the years that I've been doing in my mentoring and advising, that even in the operation, use the example of 10, 15 employees, you think you've got communications because everybody can see everybody knows everybody. But a lot of times, unless you have some kind of process and everybody's on that same page, assumptions start to get made, and that's when you get in trouble.
Yeah, and another point about that is, if you can, in big companies and small companies, if you got an opportunity to let someone walk either a week, a month, or even a year in one of the other functions' shoes, that helps a lot, so that you don't have someone in procurement saying, geez, I could really do this better if it weren't for those, and you can insert whatever function you want, those sales guys, those engineering guys, those kind of things. Very effective. I've done this myself. Having spent some time, work on a project, or be responsible for working the other side of the fence, saying, well, maybe I ought to take a few rounds with the sales folks and see what customers are saying instead of hearing it second or third hand. Same thing in quality, or working in the warehouse a little bit. Doesn't have to be for a year, could be for an afternoon or something like that, to really see what they're facing. The other term, and I'll try and just make it relatively simple, instead of going to different groups and saying, how can I make my savings targets in the procurement world, how can I see understand the operational issues or pain a group's going through, and how can I get them what they need, and we say monetize the operational issues. So we solve the operational issues, save a little money, everybody wins.
Well, your point about walking in the other person's shoes, that was something my dad taught me early in life. In certain positions in our family business, for one day a year, people did swap, and it was almost a formal thing that we swapped, or if someone new came in a position, there was a swap once they had learned their position, and it was amazing. The impact and the empathy that it built for what was happening that you had impact on that you didn't think about. Well, let's switch gears as we're kind of running out of time here. To me, this is just amazingly interesting, the impact even on small businesses. Let's talk about logistics. I mean, everyone's got to receive and move product, services. I mean, we're all moving at some point in our day, in our business. Talk to us a little bit about logistics and what we as small business people can do to improve that area.
Yeah, some of the big corporations I work for, they talk a lot about visibility, and sometimes they have, millions of dollars to spend on visibility tools and stuff, and that's great. I've sourced some of those. I've gone to the C-suite and got those approved. But really, you get down to some very basic levels of things like, just having visibility of key milestones. And sometimes we talk about shipping things across the world for some of the bigger companies, but you get right back down to here. When you have visibility, let's just use a simple example of a roofing company. When did the roofing tiles come into our warehouse? What kind of shape were they in? Who picked them? Who counted them to make sure we got all of what we asked for? And then put them on a truck and getting them out to the job site. Those kind of simple things, like you said, you got to be able to keep track of those things, because if you're getting ready to do a roofing job and you promise somebody you're going to get those tiles on the roof and get them done in the afternoon and deliver those to a customer, half the tiles show up or some of them are damaged, then the customer's unhappy. So you look at those things for logistics. It doesn't have to be overly complicated.
One of the things, and again, we're really running out of time, and I hate that because this has been very educational for me, and I hope our listeners. But if you had to stress one thing for people out there to consider, what would it be?
I'd really have to say collaboration, Rick, because no matter what you do, you want to make sure everyone's talking with each other, working together, and it sounds like such a simple thing, but when it works, it's great, and when it doesn't, it requires a whole bunch more rework in a lot of different areas. So I'd say collaboration, make sure you have visibility, understanding, so you can move forward, deliver the customer what they would need when they need it at a competitive price.
Well, Peter, I can't thank you enough. This has been a short but very sweet and educational time for us. If people would like to reach out to you, because I know you're looking for a new position, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Probably just easy, two places. One, you can look me up on LinkedIn, Peter Dill, D-I-L-L, phone number 832-488-2057, or on email, peterdill89@gmail.com. And I really do appreciate you having me on today, Rick.
Well, I appreciate you sharing your expertise. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to our final break of the day, and I hope you'll stay with us in the final segment, Silver Fox Tip of the Week. This week, I'm going to talk about growth strategies not to forget in 2018. So please stay with us. We'll be right back with you.
Human resources play a huge role in today's business world and can be a real challenge for small businesses. Allegre is a premier option in small business HR solutions and needs. Allegre HR advisors provide help to small business owners by allowing them to focus on operational needs while providing solutions that address all areas of human resources. To find out more, contact Allegre HR advisors today at 281-620-0713 or visit AllegreHR.com.
Our talk shows and music shows are looking for sponsors. Want to expand your brand awareness? Reach the hyper-local audience in Montgomery County? Lone Star Community Radio sponsorships accomplish this. Want to see our stats and rates? Check out irlonestar.com/sponsor for more information. Or call in and leave us a message at 936-647-3776.
This is the Weekly Business Hour, and this is Rick Schissler, your Silver Fox advisor and host of the show. I want to thank you again for listening today, and if you just joined us, don't forget, this show is podcast. It's posted 24, 48 hours after today's show. You can pick it up in a number of places, including YouTube or right here on the website of Lone Star Community Radio, which is www.irlonestar.com. Well, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the new year. I mean, we're in the middle of December at this point, and we're closing on a new year. It's going to be upon us before we know it. And one of the things that most folks in business, particularly small businesses, do is at least they think about, if not commit to paper, plan for next year. They think about what happened this past year and what they hope will happen in the coming year. And one of the things they think about is, how can we grow our business? How can we accelerate our sales, increase our revenue? And I think there's some tried and true principles out there that sometimes they get shuffled aside. And one of the things you don't want to do is take the things that have worked and replace them with things that are untried, untrue, or just good ideas. And several of these I'd like to talk about today, mainly as a reminder. There are things that have worked in your growth, or things that are working for other people that are basic, in my opinion, the basics of growing a business. First is, in your business, you need to build a community of people in your area, people who believe in you. Primarily, these are customers. These are your clients. These are people. You need to work to build your relationships stronger and stronger. You know, one of the things that always gets to me in some of these marketing ideas and books that I've read over the years, and even seminars, they say, well, you want to have raving customers. You want to have people that will recommend you at the drop of a hat. And I've always struggled with that because I get a sense of what that looks like. But how do we get to the point where someone says, well, I need someone to fix my plumbing, or I need to buy a new car? How do we get to the point where someone will immediately think of you if you provide that product or service and refer you? And I think it is obtainable. I've had doubts in the past, but what you want to do is build the community of people that buy from you. And you got to constantly keep your marketing message in front of these people, whether it's through texting, email, events, print, advertisement in the paper, magazines. Events is another thing. You have celebrations. We've talked about that particularly on the show. Put that into your marketing. Host events. Do community things. Be involved in your community. This past weekend, I attended a fun run that was sponsored by several companies. And there were 100+ people there. Not a huge turnout. It was, fairly cold in the 30s. But the idea is those companies keep their face out there, and we saw their names, we think about them, and potentially we use them. But continually, don't slack off. Build the community of existing customers you have. Partner with other companies, companies that do similar things. Look for those opportunities, because typically a partnership, you don't have to expend as much money, whether you're doing an event. But the idea is you build that relationship with that company so they understand more about your business. And when they have customers come across their threshold, so to speak, or even visit their website, and they can't particularly handle their need, they will refer them to you, and vice versa. A lot of people miss this opportunity. And to me, that's what I call low-hanging fruit. The third thing is go into battle. And this is kind of an interesting thing, and it requires a little thinking, a little thought, and take some risk. Go in and look for a common rival or threat out there. Pick up an issue that's not too controversial. Perhaps it's in your business that people have been doing this way or been selling this kind of product, and you've got a different product or a different way to serve, and go out there and talk about it. Come on a radio show and talk about it. Do what you can to make a point about that. Hey, I'm out here. I'm the best in the business in this neighborhood, in this industry. Look for those kinds of opportunities. This is an encouragement, and talk about it so that people begin to recognize you for what you are, potentially new customers. And the last thing I want to mention is maximize yourself online. I was talking to Bob before he came on the show this morning, Bob Weisner, about the importance of a website. It was interesting. He had said, well, it's just sort of a idea. And I said, well, you've got a wonderful website. He does more than that. Make sure you keep your website up to date. Be creative. Engage someone from the outside if you need to that'll help you, that communicates with you, that knows your business. But don't slack off. Don't lay off your website. Stay with it. Keep it moving. Keep it current. Doesn't require a great deal of time if you're not selling online. Doesn't require a great deal of money. But it is you out there in the marketplace. Well, remember, you too can sponsor the Weekly Business Hour. Contact me at rick@irlonestar.com for details. Again, you can look for a podcast of today's show, the Weekly Business Hour page, irlonestar.com, YouTube, Facebook. You can find it, and if you have some questions, please reach out to me at rick@irlonestar.com. I love your comments. I love hearing about your businesses. Thank you for joining us, and remember to stay in touch with what's happening in Montgomery County right here on Lone Star Community Radio. Until next week, stay engaged and keep focused on what counts in your business.
Thank you for checking out this production of Lone Star Community Radio. Lone Star Community Radio is Montgomery County's community radio station. Don't forget to check out this show and many others across the Lone Star Community Radio Network, either live on Conroe's FM 104.5, 106.1, the Lone Star Internet Radio app, or irlonestar.com's live audio stream, and on replay on podcast, Channel 12's Our City TV in Conroe, or Channel 21 KVQT in Houston, and of course their YouTube channel. This production is copyrighted and all rights are reserved by Lone Star Community Radio. Have a question regarding this program or other Lone Star Community Radio shows? Want to sponsor or start your own show? Call the station message line at 936-647-3776 or email the station at lscrstudios@gmail.com.